Welcome back to the weekly Big Sky Now Media panel. On this week's episode, we'll be preparing everyone for the FCS Championship game taking place this Sunday, January 7th in Frisco, Texas, between the Montana Grizzlies and the South Dakota State Jackrabbits. Exciting times, no doubt about it. Joining me on the panel today is Mark Nelke of the CDA Press, Fritz Neighbor of the Daily Interlake, and Ian Bivona of the Columbia Basin Herald. Happy New Year to all you guys. Happy to have everyone back together, talk a little more Big Sky. Got at least one more game to cover, the final one of the year. We made it this far. Wasn't sure if we get to, but here we go. So I'm Josh Dugan. Quick reminder, today's episode is brought to you by M&T Tires in Kalispell. Thank you to our friends, M&T Tires in Kalispell. All right. Starting out, guys, I did want to get your guys' thoughts. The FCS Championship game, something that's kind of been rumbling in the FCS fan community for a while, takes place on a Sunday, the final Sunday of the NFL season. Wanted to get your guys' thoughts on that. Should they change that around, or are you guys rolling with it? We'll start with you, Mark, and just kind of go around.
Yeah, I was looking at that because, ideally it would be on a Saturday. That's when most college football games are played. Then they wouldn't go up against the NFL. But then you have to realize this is a business and it's an ESPN business. And whenever they want the game, or, ESPN and ABC want to have the game, that's when the game's going to be. You want to be on television, you will play it this time, or you will find somewhere else to play. So it's not ideal for FCS fans because it's going up against, like you said, the whole week 17, which is a few big games. I looked at Saturday to try to see, okay, why couldn't they have it on Saturday? And well, of course, ESPN and ABC have an NFL doubleheader, so they're not going to go up against that. They have a bunch of college basketball on ESPN2, which I thought, well, maybe they should have it on there and give people an option. The other thing I thought of is, if they wanted to, if they thought they dared, they could do it. Maybe it'd be early for the FCS, but you play the game Saturday at 9 a.m. Then you have a 1 o'clock or 1:30 NFL game and a 5 o'clock NFL game. And I know they're always worried about like the first game running into the mighty NFL. I mean, that was the bowl game a couple weeks ago that it ran long. It ran into the intro to the the 2-hour NFL countdown before the Monday night game, which is, incredibly important that everybody sit and watch the 2-hour preview to the Monday night game. So they kicked that over onto some other channel. So that's probably what they were afraid of. But, the bottom line is that ESPN, if you don't like it, take it somewhere else. Maybe Fox wants it next time.
Yeah, no, ain't that the truth? ESPN doesn't get NFL on Sundays. What do? We're going to get some kind of football, no, for sure. Your thoughts on it, Fritz, and then we'll jump to Ian.
Oh, no, I agree with Mark. I know there's a couple NFL games on Saturday, but there's, a dozen on Sunday? So I don't know why they wouldn't have it on Saturday. In fact, remember Doug Fullerton, who was then the commissioner of the Big Sky, when we all decided he had, I think it was his brainchild, to change it from 1AA to the football championship subdivision, which is pretty clunky. At least we can shorten it to FCS. But I think part of the draw was that they were going to have their own night to play their championship game, and it was going to be in tandem with the BCS championship. But I don't think he envisioned it being on a Sunday, going head to head with, all these NFL games that are very important. So I agree with Mark. I can't come up with a single good reason why it's not on Saturday. I do like the fact that there's a good 3-week break between the semis and the championship. Gives it more of a bowl feel. Mm-hmm. I think I can remember Bobby Houck not really liking the playoff system. This is back before, the bowl championship subdivision started doing their playoffs. It's only a matter of time before they have 16 teams in their playoffs, by the way. But at that point, he goes, well, it sure is nice to have just one bowl game and have 3 or 4 weeks to prepare for it. And the kids get to go to class every day and not have to take finals on an airplane, yada, yada, yada. So should be a Saturday, but other than that, I like the fact that it's in January.
No, that is a good point. A lot more preparation. You're not rushing from game to game. No, that's very true. Ian, your thoughts on the game taking place on a Sunday?
Yeah, we're all in agreement here. I think it should be on Saturday as well. Even for the FBS, I think that game should be on the Saturday, not the Monday that it's on. Just personally, when I think college football, I think of Saturdays. So stringing these games on Sundays and Mondays is a little foreign to me. I know obviously the bowl games are every day of the week. up in the FBS. But for me, I think it should be Saturday. Maybe mess up the NFL slate a little bit, but to me, I just think it should belong on a Saturday.
Yeah, no, couldn't agree more with all of you guys. A primetime Saturday matchup would have been a lot more. I just feel like the players, the coaches, the programs, they deserve that opportunity to just highlight what they do on the national, the national audience. Even I've talked to people maybe like Monday before the big game, get a little preview going, have the FBS play and the FCS leads into it. Diehard football fans, they're going to be ready for football that day. So no, there's a lot of ways it could go, but just kind of a head scratcher where you never really think college football on a Sunday, and then all of a sudden the biggest game of the year for these two teams, they're playing on a Sunday. So it's a little funky for sure. Moving along, South Dakota State, they are favored by 10.5 points. And the I guess the over-under doesn't matter as much to my question, but it's sitting at 49.5 right now, just throwing it out there according to Sportsbet Montana for anybody looking for the betting action. But that being said, Montana is coming into this as underdogs. I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on what needs to go right for the Griz to pull off an upset and beat South Dakota State, who has won 28 straight games. We'll start with you, Ian, and just go around the circle.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds super generic, but it's just controlling the football. SDSU has the second highest turnover margin in the country of plus 15. And it's going to start with getting some long drives going early, really milk the clock, get that defense tired. A really, really, really strong SDSU defense that's only given up 257 yards per game. So it really just comes down to controlling the ball and limiting those turnovers.
Yeah, they do not make many mistakes on either side of the football. You cannot give them freebies or it could be a long day for Montana. I've been preaching that all week. You got to take care of the football, no doubt about it. How about you, Mark?
Yeah, I would agree. I would also think that the Griz have to limit the amount of chunk plays that South Dakota State gets. Make them drive it all the way, 15 play drives, not let them get big plays that they buried Albany with. And then Montana needs to get maybe a touchdown or two outside their offense, maybe a Bergen return or a defensive touchdown. Other than that, I think Montana is, good enough to play with them, even upset them. If nothing else, keep it close. But that would help, those three things.
Yeah, a special teams or defensive touchdown. That's how the Grizzlies have really been effective this year. If they could do that, that would completely change the trajectory of the game. Like I said, Jackrabbits don't make a lot of mistakes. So if you can get lucky on special teams or have a pick six, something like that, that could really change things. How about you, Fritz? What needs to go right for the Griz to pull off the quote-unquote upset?
Well, I think a lot needs to go right. I mean, on top of being a really good running team with a great quarterback, the Jackrabbits have great punt returns and a good kicking game. So it's going to be a tall order. I still kind of like the Grizzlies' chances. Of course, a year ago, I talked myself into thinking the Bobcats were going to go to win in Brookings too. But, I just see a lot of similarities between this game, as I mentioned to you before, Josh, and the 2000 final where they played Georgia Southern in Chattanooga. And I went to that thinking Adrian Peterson, if they can hold him on 100 yards, they'll win. And they had him under 100 yards, and then he broke off like a 60-yarder that won the game in the fourth quarter. So SDSU has this guy named Isaiah Davis, who's a lot like that Adrian Peterson that Georgia Southern had. They've got great running backs. Gronowski's just been a fantastic quarterback for him. Seems like every week they face a better quarterback, going back to the Cat Griz game. And then you got, Tucker Large or Lang of SDSU, the punt returner, they're just good everywhere. But they both have to travel to Texas. And I'm going to take the points, and I think the Griz have a chance at this.
Yeah, no, I think they have a chance as well. I think kind of what has to go right, in my opinion, well, I will say, Mark, good point there about making them really work for every drive. If Isaiah Davis starts breaking off big runs, that's going to be really tough to stop. But what I do think for the Grizzlies offense, one thing that really is going in their favor, they do have some explosive playmakers. Junior Bergen, Keelan White, Aaron Fonts, all those guys have had big plays this year, highlight reel type of plays down the field. Clifton McDowell can buy a little time, get out of the pocket, find those guys. I think if they can hit a few home runs, find those guys, that could be an X factor right there, in my opinion, just because you get those kind of guys. The Jackrabbits haven't played many talent like that. The Bison do have some great receivers. They have some real talented playmakers on the outside, but not a ton of that at the FCS level. I think the Griz have one of the better receiving cores. They're deep. They're talented, and if they can hit a couple home runs, that could really swing things in their favor. I did want to ask you guys, South Dakota State head coach Jimmy Rogers. It's been kind of an under-the-radar story. I haven't heard it talked much about, but it's his first year taking over the program all the way to the FCS title game. Very impressive. Well, Bobby Houck has 15 years of experience coaching, at least running the show, been doing this. So I will say, do you think experience of the two coaches could have a factor in the outcome Sunday? We'll start with you, Ian, and go around.
I think it does definitely a little bit. Obviously, Houck has that long tenured experience and some experience coaching in these title games. But Rogers on the staff last year with last year's team, I think that plays a role. Getting that more recent title game experience. We'll put it that way. But yeah, I think from a coaching perspective, I think the Houck does have the upper edge there.
Yeah, well said. How about you, Mark?
Yeah, I give Bobby a little bit of, edge for more years coaching, but I don't know. It's been since 2009 since he coached in this title game. And, Rogers, like Ian said, Rogers was on staff last year and they pretty much, returned most of those guys. So South Dakota State kind of has the template for playing at this level and in this game. So, unless he makes some crazy harebrained decisions there, I don't know. I don't know how that works as far as how much say he does, how much he drifts away from what the coordinators want and stuff like that. But I don't think it should be too much of a factor. I think South Dakota State as a team, having been there last year, is maybe a bigger factor because Montana hasn't been there in a while.
Yeah, they have a lot of those players back at it. How about you, Fritz?
I think it can make a little bit of a difference. I mean, Jimmy Rogers is he's 14-0 as a head coach, so I don't see anything to criticize there. They've had very few close games. Montana State, tellingly, was one. It was early, but it was close, and they were able to pull that one out too. Although they needed a a touchdown pass reversed upon review to sneak it out. So, and Bobby's been there 3 times. He hasn't won one. I think he's probably overdue. So I think he's doing everything he can to game this one up and come out of there with a win.
Yeah, he's hungry for that first title for sure. I just got to say, I don't think it'll have a huge impact on the outcome, but if it gets late in the game, you got to blow a timeout versus not blowing a timeout. Little things like that. Do you go for it on 4th down versus not going for it on 4th down? Those are really high pressure situations. Coach Rogers has done a heck of a job, but he hasn't been in those shoes too many times. I will say, I believe he was assistant head coach last year. I'm sure he had a big impact on the coaching staff with their head coach on their way out. I think he was kind of known as the next guy up, but you haven't been there that many times. That's the only time I could see it come up. 1-score game, couple minutes to go. Do you punt or do you go for it near midfield? Little things like that. Do you call the right play? Whatever it may be, that's where it could get interesting. So I give a slight edge to Coach Houck in those situations. But that being said, we'll see if it comes into play. But that's when I would really take it into account, late game, high pressure situations. As far as X factor type of players, wanted to get your guys' thoughts on who are going to kind of be the X factor Sunday for either team, whatever way you guys want to go. We'll start with you, Fritz, and then we'll go around.
Well, I think Gronowski is going to be a key player. Obviously, we talked about Isaiah Davis too. It's a team that just runs the ball really well, but then when they need a play from the quarterback, Gronowski just seems to come up big, and he's come up big for years now. I think the trend that I identified was that in the playoff, well, actually, and if you want to call the Bobcat game a playoff game, which it kind of was, opposing quarterbacks have just not been able to complete a high percentage of passes. There's been a little bit of pressure, a little bit of inaccuracy, but a lot of pressure, actually. And I think that has to continue. They need to be able to stop the big gash runs, keep them out of the end zone, and then get pressure on the quarterback. That means leaving your safeties and corners on an island. But so far, they played really well as a unit in the playoffs. And I think that's going to be the key right there, is just, maybe getting Gronowski to have a subpar game, which he doesn't have very often.
Yeah, no, completely agree. Did a little breakdown for our other thing, the sports now, and that was one of my points was got to put pressure on that kid. That Griz had a lot of success doing that last week. Not saying it's going to work, but make him uncomfortable, because if he has time in the pocket and he's well protected, does not make many mistakes. And kind of an interesting comparison, you mentioned Gronowski and Isaiah Davis. Reminds me a little bit of Michigan at the FBS level. Nobody gives J.J. McCarthy his credit. But a lot of times he makes a big play when they need it. Led him to a lot of wins. Maybe not the most exciting guy, but Gronowski, winner, knows how to win games. And sometimes that's just a certain skill dudes have. So something to that. How about you, Ian? Thoughts on could be an X factor?
Yeah, I'll go with one for both teams. Obviously, we mentioned Junior Bergen earlier. I think it's going to require a big play on special teams or like kickoff return, punt return to really keep Montana in this game. I don't know if it's a touchdown, but maybe it's getting them inside field goal range late in the game, something like that. And then for SDSU, slowing down Jaden, I hope I'm pronouncing his last name right, Jaden Janke, 52 catches for 891 yards and 8 scores. That's 17 yards a catch. That's it's a pretty crazy margin. So it's really going to be coming down, slowing them down on the outside with that receiver out there.
Yeah, only because I looked it up. I believe it's the Yankee. I think they're twins or the brothers, but no, I was saying that's what I was saying too. And I was like, wait, I better do my homework. But no, I hear you. Both players to watch for sure. Explosive players. How about you, Mark?
Yeah, I'd agree with Ian. He mentioned Junior Bergen. We talked about this earlier. If he breaks one, and or if the defense gets a touchdown, that could swing it Montana's way. Another X factor for Montana is Clifton McDowell, the quarterback. I mean, he's kind of the reason they're here, or one of them anyway. Once they went to him as the quarterback, he can throw it. He can run it a little bit. They don't want to run him too much, but he could be the X factor if if he's inaccurate, and that could be a problem, obviously. And maybe breaks a few runs, and that opens up the passes. And like you guys have talked about, Montana has some really good, talented receivers. So that's Montana's. South Dakota State, I mean, they almost just kind of seem like a machine. If you kind of stop Gronowski, there's the running back, and if you kind of stop him, there's the twin receivers, Yankees. I don't know how you beat them, other than maybe just stop them a couple times and get a couple cheap touchdowns through returns or defense. So.
Yeah, I know what you mean with the Jackrabbits. It's like definitely one of those teams. It's hard to single in on a single guy. Very team oriented. Everyone does their job, and it results in a lot of wins. I think Clifton McDowell has to be the X factor. That's my choice right there. I have a feeling he'll be the most dynamic QB the Jackrabbits have faced all year. They've faced some great quarterbacks, but when McDowell gets it going, he could be special in space, can make a lot of plays outside the pocket. That's what it's going to take. It's going to take some special plays from Clifton McDowell. Junior Bergen, Keelan White, you mentioned Aaron Font. Got to get those guys down the field, get them the ball, and I really think it's going to come down to which quarterback has the bigger game Sunday. And McDowell playing in his home state of Texas, little something there. I'll kind of give him the edge and think he's going to be the X factor, or need to be, for the Grizz to win at least. I like his chances to have a big game. Speaking of, we kind of mentioned it earlier, Montana State and the Jackrabbits did play earlier in the year, so there's that mutual opponent. Montana State lost to the Grizz 37-7. South Dakota State beat Montana State 20-16. So just, is there any weight to having the mutual opponent? And this time of year, you kind of throw everything out, but it's worth asking, do you guys take any weight having that mutual opponent between the two? We'll start with you, Fritz, and go around.
It'd have more weight if the game was more recent. It was the second week of the season. The thing is I thought MSU put together a pretty good blueprint. They kept the game close. They kept it a one-score game. I was just reading what we put in the Interlake about it, and Coach Vegan said, we felt it would be a fourth quarter game, and it was. So the Bobcats managed to outrush them that game, and Gronowski threw for about 187. I think as a team, the Jackrabbits rushed for 157. I don't think Davis played that game. I'd have to look, but they put down a pretty good blueprint. Ball control, don't give up the big plays or keep them to a minimum, and give yourself a chance in the fourth quarter. And man, that was close. That pass into the back of the end zone was right there. Thought it was a miracle catch. The scoreboard operator thought it was a miracle catch too, and so did the back judge. So then it got switched. So yeah, it's doable. I think it was a good blueprint. Doesn't mean the Grizz can pull off something similar. Yeah, I don't know about that, but that's a pretty good plan that the Bobcats put together.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was going with it. Kind of lay the foundation, kind of see how a mutual opponent plays against your opponent, kind of get an idea if there's certain guys that jump out on film that are dominating Montana State, or Montana State had a guy who had a huge game. How can you kind of replicate that knowing that, well, we went out and beat those guys? So that's something definitely to factor in. How about you, Mark?
Yeah, I agree with Fritz. I mean, those games are so far apart that it's kind of hard to compare. Plus, you could look at South Dakota State beat North Dakota State, and the Griz needed overtime to beat North Dakota State at home. So if you wanted to kind of play that game, so I don't know. I mean, I think we're in agreement. Montana's going to keep it close, and whether they can make the plays or not at the end to win it, we'll see. That's why they play.
Yeah, no, that's what it all comes down to. After all this season, it'll probably come down to a couple plays at the end. That seems like how it always goes in these great games. How about you, Ian? Just any thoughts on the mutual opponents?
Yeah, once again, we're all in agreement here. I think it's mostly taken away seeing what Montana State did well against SDSU. But I don't think you can really look at the score differential and be like, oh, okay, Montana won by a lot more over MSU. I mean, that game was, like Fritz said, week 2 of the season. We're a long way away from there.
Oh, ain't that the truth? I think the biggest thing that jumps out at me is Montana is a very physical football team. So maybe they see that the Cats were able to go toe-to-toe with the Jackrabbits in their home turf. You kind of go, we got to go out there and play a very physical football game, kind of put it on these guys. And because I don't think many defenses in the country are doing what the Grizzlies, similar to the Jackrabbits, are doing on a play in and play out basis. Just so many guys who can make tackles, make it a physical football game. So maybe that would be my takeaway there. But no, well said in the sense, if it happened in week 10, it's a little different than week 2 or week 1. So that all being said, let's get to our kind of final predictions, how it plays out Sunday in Frisco. We'll start with you, Mark, and go around and kind of wrap this thing up. But it's that time. What are you thinking?
Well, let's see. I put on my thing on my head here. I mean, I don't know. I mean, we always try to predict these things, and a lot of times we're not even close. But I mean, there's like 3 different outcomes I see. It's going to be a close game that South Dakota State wins, or a close game that Montana wins, or South Dakota State somehow breaks through and runs away with it. So those are the 3 that I see. It'll be interesting to see what happens. Like we talked about, South Dakota State haven't played that many close games. What's that like if they need to get a few first downs to finish a game? And some people would say that Montana's been quote unquote lucky or fortunate to escape with a couple home overtime wins in the playoffs, but maybe that's just how it goes, and maybe they got a little more magic with their offense and their defense, and McDowell throws one up to Junior Bergen at the end, and we look at the replay to see if he caught it in the end zone or not. So.
Yeah, this time he'll get the foot down, hopefully, for Montana fans. But no, I hear you. I really think that experience playing in close games could definitely become a factor late in that ball game. How about you, Ian? Predictions for Sunday?
Yeah, personally, I don't see it being a blowout in either team's favor. I think it's going to be a really close game. Comes down to those last couple drives, last couple minutes of the game. I am leaning more towards SDSU. If I had to give it a score, 28-24, maybe something like that. But I think this is going to be a really close game that comes down to the wire. Which, how my predictions have gone so far, probably means SDSU will win in a blowout, but we'll see.
Little reverse jinx there. No. How about you, Fritz?
Oh, I'm kind of went back through the history. There's been a couple of games where the Griz didn't really seem to be favored. Georgia Southern in 2000 being one of them. They wound up losing that by 4. I don't think they're really favored to win out Marshall's home field 95 either. And they won that one 22-20. So I'm just going to go Griz 22, Jackrabbits 20. And we'll see what happens Sunday.
Yeah, leave it at that, and I'll admit maybe I got a little bias, but no, I'm going to go the Griz 24-21 is my prediction. I picture this one being close all game long. I kind of think the Jackrabbits get out to a hot start. Montana kind of has to slow down the tempo, kind of make it into their kind of a ball game, because South Dakota State, like we've all talked about, they have so much experience. I think that's going to pay off early, but maybe it's just been those close wins the last couple of weeks, kind of preparing them for a close game. But I just think Clifton McDowell finds a way late, makes some plays, and the Griz, it comes down to the final few possessions. I got them getting it done. I really do think that Mark kind of mentioned it. That could be a big impact, is that experience. playing in tight games because, yes, the Jackrabbits have won a lot of games. How many times have you had to make 1 or 2 plays to win a football game late? Probably hasn't happened since that Montana State game. I know they played a really close game versus Southern Illinois, and that one kind of jumped out at me where I watched Southern Illinois versus Montana. Very physical football team. Versus Idaho. Southern Illinois and Idaho, physical game. Montana might watch that and go, we can kind of bring our game, make this a physical ball game like the Salukis did, and at least keep it close. So that's going to be it. I think Clifton McDowell has to be the X factor, and I got him winning 24-21. We'll see how that plays out Sunday. Just having fun with it. Definitely going to be an exciting game. It's been great covering the Big Sky all year long. If there's anything else you guys want to throw out there, if not, awesome stuff, and just looking forward to the game Sunday. Got to see how it all shakes out. All right. That'll do it for this week's Big Sky Now media panel. Hope everyone out there enjoys the game. It's been a lot of fun covering it leading up to this. Thank you to our friends M&T Tire and Kalispell for the support. And thank you as always to our media panel for doing this. Mark Nelke, Ian Bivona, Fritz Neighbor. Appreciate you guys. It's been a lot of fun. I'm Josh Dugan, and we're out. Great stuff as always, everyone.